Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, CEO of the Cultural Communications Agency, Flash. Each episode, I bring on a different business leader who's doing some fantastic game changing work. And this episode is no different. I'm so excited to have Matt Conwell, who's the managing partner of Rarebreed Ventures. He is doing some incredible work in the venture space to get to founders who need the money the most and have the most innovative ideas and often look like me. So it's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Mac.
How's it going?
Oh, just causing trouble here, there, and everywhere.
We all need troublemakers in our lives.
Yeah. See, I appreciate that because sometimes people are like, you're just a troublemaker. And I'm like, I am. It's a good thing. Uh, I'm delighted to have you on the show. So, with the podcast, first question is always the same. I'm always fascinated by the answers. I am sure you're going to have a good one. So, Mac, what was your first job?
My first job, excuse me, my first job was working at Popeyes.
Ah,
Working at Popeyes, seasoning chicken. First job I ran.
oh my gosh. Okay, so how old were you and where was this?
I believe I was 13, or 13 or 14, and this is in Woodlawn, Maryland. It's the Popeyes right by Security Square Mall. So anybody who knows anything about like Baltimore County, Security Square Mall is a staple, and there's Popeyes right outside the mall that I worked at for 3 months.
3 months. Why did you only last 3 months?
It was a terrible job. Nobody want to be sitting there seasoning chicken all day. Like, I hated that job.
Is there any special secret thing you learned about Popeye's chicken? Because I do love the sandwiches. Um,
Nothing I can say on this podcast.
Damn. But I guess I thought I would get some little detail about what's in that batter that makes it so good, especially when it's spicy. But fine, okay. Okay, so you go from seasoning chicken at Popeyes to being this incredible VC. There's a story there. What's this career journey like?
The career journey. So the story is after Popeyes, I went to go work at a crab shack that I worked all through high school and into college. But when I got to college, I went to school for computer science at Morgan State University, HBCU here in Baltimore. In my sophomore year of school, I got an internship with the DoD that got me a top secret clearance. And that's like the true beginning of my professional career.
Wow.
And when I got my top secret clearance, I got into the program and I recognized the value of the work I was doing and producing was different compared to what I was getting paid. Right. So, like, I'm working for the government, I'm doing high level work and I'm coding. And like all the people around me were all coding on the same project, but I make significantly less money than everybody else because I'm in college and they're not. That was the only difference. And so that in that moment, I realized that like I wasn't long for college. And so the very next year, I dropped down and got a job in Northrop Grumman. Started my career as a software developer, supporting the DoD as a government contractor. Did that for several years, and then in 2010, me and two of my best friends decided to start a company. First company ran for 4.5 years. That one successfully got to an exit. My second company, not so much. I then worked at a marketing firm for a year, which was interesting because it wasn't work I wanted to do, but it was easy money. But after being there for a year, they got a client that I didn't agree with ethically.
Wow.
And so really what happened was the same week Philando Castile got shot and killed in his car by a police officer for legally having a firearm was the same week that the marketing firm that I worked for started soliciting the National Rifle Association for a contract.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah. And I was supposed to be the lead on that. So 2 weeks later, they won that contract and I quit. At the time that I quit, it was a Friday. I didn't have any plans. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had been telling people that we won that contract, that I was going to quit, and everybody thought I was joking. My friends included. And so the very next Monday, I got an email from the investment arm of the state of Maryland saying that they were hired. And so I just applied off of the email, and 4.5 months later, I got my first job in venture.
Wow. So it's interesting. So you have this really unique fund where you're actually looking for underrepresented founders and finding incredible diamonds and they're just waiting to be found. What's sort of your like philosophy behind how you're sourcing companies?
My philosophy is look everywhere, look anywhere. And the big thing for me is when I started investing, I started off working for the investment of the state of Maryland. So we can only invest in companies in Maryland,
Mm,
right? So I'm only doing early stage companies in Maryland. Fast forward, I guess about 6 months onto the job, when I was working, when they hired me, and this is late 2016, they were struggling to invest in more black-led companies. And so I ended up putting together a proposal for a pre-seed fund to invest in those entrepreneurs earlier than anybody else, 40 and 50,000 each, to try and help propel them to our seed fund, right? And so now I went from just doing early stage companies in the state of Maryland to doing even earlier stage companies in the state of Maryland, only ran by black people. And so when you do stuff like that, you got to be really creative about where to find all these founders, because the problem is in a lot of places, and this countrywide and internationally, a lot of the rooms and the events and the places where all the tech people meet are not the rooms and places that black tech folk go to.
exactly.
And so it was my job to go to their rooms. And so I spent a lot of time speaking and going to all the places that other investors don't. And somehow we managed to get some really great deal flow out of that. Right? Just like, just imagine if you don't just open your doors, but actually walk out of them and go find them, you can get the deal flow. And so that was kind of the way I started my career in venture and built my career in venture. So for me, when I think about fundraising, I'm all about going everywhere. And it's always like interesting to me when I meet other investors who only get deals through their network. Like, yeah, they just sit around all day and wait for emails to come in. I'm like, I need a little bit more control in my career than that. But that's just me.
Yeah, oh. Well, it's interesting because, again, I think, as we were saying before we started the podcast, like we get to see tons of different startups who come through our universe because we're the ones producing a lot of times those tech events, and I deliberately, because I'm the one producing the event, make sure that there are founders who are black and brown at the center of that. And then oftentimes people say, "How did you find these?" I'm like, "I went and looked for them." Like you're not going to find people at every one of these weird events that people don't feel comfortable. But if you design things that people feel comfortable at, guess what? They will be found, and they will have incredible ideas. So, what made you start Rarebreed?
So the reason I started Rarebreed was, if I take a step back, like when I got into venture, my goal was I was going to work for the state for a little bit, build up my skill set, build up my credibility, and then get a job at a big fund and make a bunch of money. Right? That was the plan. My plan got derailed by these amazing founders I was connecting to, and one in particular was a woman who I met at the beginning of me starting the pre-seed fund for the state, who had this really amazing idea for a dryer that could dry a wig or hair weave 15 minutes with zero heat. If you're interested, go to meetspundle.com.
We're putting the
Spundle, like spin bundle, Spundle,
and we were putting it
meetspundle.com.
in the show notes because this is actually what prompted me to be like, I need to do this podcast because as someone who lives for waves and fully embrace it, that's my choice. It costs me so much money. So if I could get it dried, I would be so happier. And I have to get redone every 6 weeks and have it last a little longer. So but I'm your customer. Think about that. Like, as we now like quickly derail, I'm your customer. Like someone who
100%.
is in business, you know, doesn't want to deal with her hair. Like I just don't. Like I can move mountains, but to have me do my hair is just I will pay someone. And I've got disposable income to pay and like to pay for it, but like I want speed and efficiency. And there are plenty of Black women out there who are like me, who like want speed and efficiency. Have just I don't have a desire to wear my hair naturally. Kind of never have. Just not my thing. I don't know. Maybe 5, 10 years in the future I might, but like right now, I live for weaves because it's easy. And there's so few products out there to serve people like me. Because like when I get my hair done, it's $500. So like I got money to spend. So if you make products that can make my life easier, I will pay for them and I will pay a premium for them.
100%. Right? I mean, the concept itself is such an amazing concept, right? It's like it's such an original idea, which is something that we don't see and venture often. And here's this incredible woman. She's well educated. She's an engineer. She's a patent examiner. Like building stuff is what she does.
That's what she does. Literally what she does.
It's what she does. And I watched her for 3 years get nothing but no's because she was too early. She didn't have a prototype and they didn't believe in the market. Now, I will have a caveat here that says if you're raising capital pre-product, pre-revenue, it's usually really, really hard. It's damn near impossible for most people. It's just really hard. She was no exception. But the product she was building or the concept she had at the time was extremely exceptional. Right? Like every concept's not that unique. And I really wanted to support her, and there was no way to do it. Even like I created this fund for the state of Maryland to support entrepreneurs like her, and she couldn't even get through that because it was such a competitive process. And so then I ended up watching this woman become a surrogate mother to raise the money that she needed to start building a proper prototype. And I got really frustrated because I couldn't think of a fund I could have worked at and made that investment, and understanding all of the risk involved, but then also understanding all of the upside because she's literally going to the market where there's nothing. I tweeted today, a woman put up a tweet that went viral where in order to dry her wig, she clipped it to her ceiling fan. Right? Like in here's a founder who had a concept to solve her pain point years ago and is just now getting to the point where she can build out the product properly. And it took me leaving my job and raising a fund to get her to do that. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
And it's the thing, it's like, it's $1 trillion market. It's and like, when you think about all the kind of branches that leads to and all the additional products and accessories, because also she's an engineer, she's got patents, like who knows what else she can build. And technically that's what you're supposed to be investing in the founder, to see that. And it's like if I saw a founder who was an engineer and come up with this, I'm like, wait, on spec, this is will help you get there because this is not the only thing you're going to build. And you hear that all the time from these other VCs. It's like, but you're not looking for people who are actually qualified. You're looking for someone's son who you play golf with.
100%. 100%. And so, I wanted to be a difference maker, and the best way for me to do that was to start a fund. So like I do this out of a labor of love. There's so many more things I could do to make real money, but I do this for the impact that I can make by supporting founders like her.
So talk to me about raising a fund, because I know this is extremely difficult. And I know there are a lot of people out there who are thinking, well, man, if I could just raise a fund, I could go out and do and help make things better. But I know that it's clearly not an easy thing to do. So, can you give us a little bit under the hood about what it takes to actually get a fund off the ground?
So first and foremost, fundraising sucks. Whether you're doing it for a fund, for a startup, for a nonprofit, doesn't matter. Fundraising is not fun. Start there. Raising money for a fund is interesting because like I started raising my fund in September of 2020. So right in the full swing of COVID. It's when I decided to raise a fund. So what I understand, my understanding of raising a fund is probably different than most people, right? Because like for me, raising a fund was having a bunch of meeting on Zoom. The bigger thing for me, more than raising a fund, was that when I went to go raise my fund, I recognized I didn't have a network of potential LPs or limited partners. Those are the people who invest in funds, which basically means I didn't have a network of people who had enough money that they could write checks to be part of a fund. And so that was the really hard part for me, was trying to figure out like, okay, I got a story down, I got a strategy down, I know what kind of companies I want to invest in. Who's going to give me their money to invest in these companies? I'm nothing more than a glorified financial advisor, right? People give me their money to make them more money. That's how this works. But I didn't know where to find people that could write checks anywhere from 10K to a million, right? Like how many people just know somebody that can write $1 million check and understand that $1 million check is
You never
like
come back.
1% of their net worth. And it's okay if it doesn't come back, right? Well, it's not okay. But like they understand it's an investment. And so what happened for me was Twitter was amazing. So after George Floyd gets killed, I start tweeting more. At first, I started tweeting just because I had to get some thoughts off my head about the whole George Floyd situation. And then after that, I just kept tweeting. I was tweeting about startups. I'm tweeting about fundraising. I'm tweeting about raising a fund. And as I did that, I noticed other investors were following me. Like more and more of my followers were becoming investors. And so I just started reaching out to a bunch of them, like, hey, to get meetings with them because I needed to learn how to raise a fund. Like conceptually, I figured I could do it, but I need to learn how I can make it happen. And so, I started having these meetings. And as I started having these meetings, um, some of those investors started saying, hey, I really like what you're doing. I think you're taking a unique approach. What's your minimum? I tell them, they're like, yeah, I could come in for that, or I could come in for a little more than that. And I get shocked because I didn't know that investors at funds could also invest in funds themselves. Like, y'all don't just invest in startups, you also invest in funds. Oh, this is cool. And so then that was like the light bulb moment where it's like, okay, Twitter's going to be the way I raise this money. And so I would say probably, we've raised a little more than 8 million to date. And I would say most of that came through Twitter. The vast majority came through Twitter.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you are a beast on Twitter, and as I said, I've been following and lurking. So I'm like, it's interesting because you know what I think, folks, you never know who's watching, and you never know when like an opportunity to strike. Like I said, I saw about Spindle, I was like, oh, we got to talk. Um, so now that you've raised a fund, so are you? This is so you're at Fund One.
Yes.
Is that closed?
No. So we got 8 million in commitments. Were the goal is to get to 10. So my goal is to get to 10 million by the end of next quarter. So by the end of Q3 of 2021, hopefully, we'll close the full 10 million.
Fantastic. And then have you started deploying checks?
Yes. So we've made 17 investments to date. We've also done one follow-on investment in one of our companies. And we're super excited about our portfolio.
Awesome. And for you, what sort of do you care about the vertical other than like dope founder?
No, I don't care about the vertical. Like, I think of the 17 companies, I think maybe only 3 or 4 of them have overlapping verticals. It's like almost every single company is in a completely different and unique vertical. We invest in all industries. The only thing we don't do is we don't do life sciences. So like if it's a therapeutic or anything like that, like I don't have a PhD. Like you got to be able to evaluate the science on those kind of things. Not what I do.
Oh, it makes sense though. And so you've got a fund. I'm sure you get a ton of emails from people saying, "Hey, please fund me." What's the appropriate way for a founder to come correct towards you? Are you warm intros? Are you submit through a website? What's the best way to get in contact?
The best way to get in contact with me is probably on Twitter. Twitter's your best shot. Don't do LinkedIn. So if you go to LinkedIn and you send me a LinkedIn message, more than likely I'm not going to see it. This goes for everybody, not just entrepreneurs. If I connect with you on LinkedIn, LinkedIn does give you access to my email address, but it's my personal email address. If you send something to my personal email address, probably not going to see that either. So the best way to get to me are Twitter, and there my actual email address is floating on the internet in some places for some cold, for list of VCs who take cold intros, right? Now, caveat to that, if you send me a cold DM or a cold email, I do read them. I do invest in companies that do that. I do not read every single one of them. So heads up, right? If you send me something cold and I don't see it or if I don't respond to it, just reply. Just send it again, right? It's nothing personal. Has nothing to do with you. It just has to do with the amount of messages I get every day. So, and the last thing is, if you're a founder and you're sending me a cold message or you're sending me a cold email, give me a short description about what you're building, no more than 3 or 4 sentences, 4 sentences at the max. And then give me like 2 or 3 key points, like a bullet points of, we got X amount of users, we're doing X in revenue, or we've got X amount of people on our waiting list, or, our technologies got fully built and we're planning to launch on this day, whatever it is. Give me 2 or 3 of those with the short description. That's all you need.
That's pretty fair. Considering the nightmares I've seen other friends try and get to VCs, that's actually very accessible for you, Mac. I think it's awesome.
I try. Not perfect. I definitely try.
Yes, you gotta try. So for you, thinking about all the work that you've done, what do you think you'd tell 25-year-old Mac?
The thing I would tell 25-year-old Mac would be grow your network. And your network is probably the most important thing in your life that you don't recognize. The biggest hurdles I've had to get over throughout my career, whether it was as a software engineer, as a founder, and then later as a VC, was at the beginning of each was the lack of a network and
Mhm.
needing to start from ground zero and figuring out how to build that up. As an entrepreneur, a great way to kind of, grow your network very quickly, go through an accelerator, right? Accelerators are, if nothing else, accelerators can be really, really good at helping you grow your network, right? Especially locally. And then for the bigger ones nationally, right? But yeah, that would be the big thing. Would try to teach 25-year-old Mac to really hone in on and get better at growing and staying in touch of your network. And then I would tell 25-year-old me to, start listening to audiobooks. So I try to listen to 50 audiobooks a year. It's something I've been doing for like the last 4 years and something I wish I had started sooner.
And what kind of audiobooks?
So mostly nonfiction and then some fiction thrown in there. Like yeah, meat and potatoes is great, but at some point you want a little bit of dessert, so you gotta give yourself some fiction there for dessert. But I do mostly like biographies and business books.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the business books. I do have to lighten up my load to be a little bit more fun, uh, and stuff that I listen to because like I haven't opened a book in forever, but my Audible is quite expensive, so I'm right there with you. So, question about like do's and don'ts.
Mm-hmm.
You're a founder.
Yep.
What are the 3 things you should not do when reaching out to a VC?
Don't beg. Shouldn't be begging. Don't ever tell a VC that you need their money or else this don't exist. Like that ain't never going to make somebody excited. Um, don't try to do a teaser. Be like, hey, I got this amazing fintech company in a $5 trillion industry. Interested in learning more? No, like, you didn't tell me anything. Every fintech business is in a $1 trillion industry. So, what's that mean? What are you building? So don't be too coy about it, and then understand that none of this is personal. So if somebody didn't respond to you, or don't get back to you as soon, or they don't give you the answer you want, it's never personal. So then after that, don't come back to them with a, oh, I guess you don't really care about founders, or you talk a good game, but you're really not doing anything, or, do you even fund companies? What are you about? Like, don't do that. I see people do this kind of stuff to Arlen Hamilton all the time, and every now and then she'll put them on blast on Front Street. But like, that's not going to help you. Like, do you think you're going to shame me into writing you a check? Like,
Right.
that's never worked.
Well, that's interesting because I think it's this weird sort of intersection of like, well, you're black and brown like me, so why aren't you writing me a check? And it's like, people, that's not the thing here. This isn't. You've got to take all the emotion out of it. And I think oftentimes, especially for younger folks, this is a big thing. Like, there's so much emotion wrapped up into this, which is why you get the begging and the shame, the attempt to shame.
Yep. And at the end of the day, a Rarebreed over a course of 3 years, we'll make 35 to 40 investments. But that's over 3 years. And over those 3 years, I'm going to see somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 plus companies.
Mm-hmm.
So look at 10,000 plus companies and making investments in 40. If I don't invest in you, doesn't mean you have a bad idea, you don't have a good company. It doesn't mean I don't like you. It doesn't mean I'll never write you a check. It just means in this moment, it's not what it is. But when you get emotional and come back like that, then for me, that's going to make me not interested in investing in you in the future. I'm not going to want to get to know you in the future. Now, granted, for me personally, I probably will, right? Like I try to give founders some grace because I get it. It's emotional. It's your baby. I've been there. I know what it's like. But just know, like, you're not helping your case
At all. It's like it really is not. Okay. Flip side. What's some advice that founders when they're reaching out or pitching to a VC should do?
when you pitch to a VC. You want to, when you're reaching out, when you're just doing the reach out phase, you want to have the craft the email again. No more than 4 sentences, hopefully 2 to 3 sentences about what you do. Have a link to your deck. If you're weirded out about the whole deck thing, do a doxin or something like that. People do those these days. Um, and then it also helps is if you have a link to your calendar. Now, most VCs aren't going to use it, but sometimes they will. So having that there can be really helpful in the outreach, because sometimes they might not even respond to your email. They just put time on your calendar, which at the end of the day is a win.
Of course.
Oh, and then the other trick is, if you want to go the next level, make a video of your pitch. And the tool we usually tell founders to use is Loom. So Loom is a great platform
Oh,
for recording your deck while you pitch, and you can have a little video of yourself doing the actual pitch. So that way, instead of me just seeing a flat deck, I can actually get all the context behind it.
I'll hear, and so you'll hear their person's inflections and emotion as they go through part of the deck,
100%.
which comes in really handy because it helps you begin to read people.
I think so. It helps me.
Yeah. I mean, it's I'm always like, tell me, like, don't tell me about your deck. Tell me what's the story. Like, what's the deal with this? Why are you doing this? And I'm always amazed at like how sometimes some founders are just so robotic, and then other founders are just like, and here's why we're awesome. This is what we're trying to do, and here's how we think we can partner with brands that you're working with. I'm like, thank you. That's all I asked. I didn't need the entire life story, but like I wanted you to actually articulate what you were trying to say.
Yep.
And so now that you've like done the initial pitch, um, what are some like is there ever like a floor in terms of what folks should be asking for? Is it the first check should be 10K, 25K, 50K, like, or go where you think the market will bear?
So that's different, right? What I would say is you're every time you raise capital, you're raising capital to hit the key metrics that allow you to raise your next round of the capital. And so what I mean is you raise your seed round to hit whatever your key metric is. Let's call it, 500,000 in revenue, or 50,000 users, or you know, a million in GMV, right? So that when you hit those metrics, if you hit those metrics like you say you will with that money, you'll be in a position to then go raise your A round, your Series A round of funding, right? And so when you're sometimes founders make this mistake of, I'm just going to raise a bunch of money because that's what you're supposed to do. No, no. Or I'm going to raise just enough money to do the bare minimum. No, you want to raise enough money where you can execute on your plan for, let's call it, 12 to 18 months, but have that plan be tied to a very specific outcome that can help lead you to your next round of funding. And the reason why most people say raise money for 18 months is because after 12 months, you should have hit whatever that key metric or what those goals you were going to. And that gives you a 6-month buffer to then go raise your next round of funding. Right. So, as a caveat, if you raise venture capital, you raise money from a professional VC like myself, understand the moment I cut you a check, I am expecting you to be on this hamster wheel of raising money every 12 to 18 months. There's some very specific reasons for that. But just understand, like, that's the way we as VCs think. So don't ever think that you as a founder, you're going to raise, like, I'm going to raise 500,000 or a million from one VC and I'm never raise again. Probably not. It's probably not how that's going to work, right? So you got to think, when you think about fundraising, you got to think in terms of what's coming up in the future. What's the follow up? What's the next big thing?
So, so important advice. And like the team, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about who and what they need to hire early on. And you as a VC, what do you tend to advise your founders? Like, make sure you have an accountant, a lawyer, a chief of staff, COO. Like, what are your sort of ideas around that sort of founding team to help you set you up for success?
Your founding team should be the team that can help you execute on the initial product and vision, right? So typically, you need somebody to build it, somebody to sell it, and probably somebody to make it look good, right? That's what the basic team. When you start talking about all the like technical assistance setting the organization up to run properly, you're talking about accounting, benefits, things like that. There's a bunch of startups that created a bunch of tools that solve for a lot of that stuff already.
Exactly.
And I would tell you, don't go out and spend a whole bunch of money on that stuff, because what you don't want to do is be one of these founders that goes out and goes, you know, hires a lawyer, gets the you're in and don't get an LLC, but you get a C corp, done, and you have your lawyer do that. Go set up, payroll and benefit packages. Go get your patent, all that good stuff, and then get started, right? Because you might have spent, 5-10 grand on just getting set up. Start your company and then realize, oh, what you were building wasn't something that people actually wanted. So what was the point of you doing all that pre-work?
Exactly.
This ain't an MBA class, folks.
Just get what you need to get started and keep it moving. And
Yep.
then remember that efficiency is key. And there are, even in the last since 10 years since I've been in business, there's been so much shift in the amount of products that are available to solve so many different problems. Like, I use Bill.com, for example. That's payroll. You're done. That's how you, there's a million and one of these. There's a million and one accounting software that you can use that can do things for you that can be done by bots, for example. Um, but like, try and be as efficient as possible.
Yep. Try to be as efficient as possible. Try to spend as least money as possible. Like, you got time. You'll get there. Just don't go blow all your money just yet. Make sure what you're doing is going in the direction you want it to go.
Oh, and I think another kind of common question I think folks often ask is, do you really pay yourself a real salary, or does that go all that money go back into the business? So I think this kind of wraps around like the idea of like hustle hard and like no sleep till Brooklyn, and that there's been a big shift around what hustle culture looks like. because obviously it's leading to burnout and mental health issues, and also we're coming out of a pandemic. We're coming out of a pandemic, kind of. So, where do you sort of stand on that?
Early throughout the life of the company, the CEO rarely is the person who makes the most money in the company. It's not a common thing. Most founders don't know that going in. So start there. Number one. Number two, when you're just getting started, most of the money is going to go back to the business, right? Even if you raise let's say you raise a pre-seed round of 500,000, most of that's probably going to go to product, maybe hiring, doing some development, and then you pay yourself a little bit, right? But then when you get to the point where your company's bringing in cash and you can pay yourself, you want to pay yourself a reasonable salary, right? You don't need to pay yourself like 200,000 a year, right? If you want to pay yourself 100,000, 125, okay. You want to pay yourself 75, even better, right? But at the end of the day, from a VC's perspective, I want to see the vast majority of the resources going back into growing the business, because the faster you grow the business, the more valuable the business is going to be, which means your equity in the business is where your true value is. So that's what it is for founders and CEOs. Their real value in a company comes from their equity, not in their salary.
Exactly, and don't give up all of your equity, obviously, at the beginning. Please don't.
I mean, if you do, contact me. There are ways to get it fixed.
Because I've seen I'm shocked. I've seen so much terrible stuff. And I'm like, oh no, what have you done? You're a founder. Why did you give up 40% of your company to one investor? Ugh. So much to learn. So it would be interesting to kind of talk to you about kind of around this next part of it about this hustle culture, but also self care. So for you, what do you do for your self care?
So when it comes to self-care, do what I say, not as I do, first and foremost. Um, Whatever it is that you do to de-stress, never stop doing that. I don't care what's going on. I don't care how busy you are. I don't care what you're building. Never stop doing whatever it is you do to de-stress. Whether it's go to the gym, ride your bike, hang out with your kids, watch a movie, go to whatever it is, never stop. Because this work will never stop. So make sure you do that. Make sure you take care of your health. Please take care of your health. If you need to go to the doctors, go to the doctors. Something's ailing you, go get that taken care of. If you gotta take some medicine, go take that. If you're going to a holistic, whatever it is, make sure you take care of your health. Because it's too easy to get caught up in the trap of always working and like, it's a little nagging thing over there. I got some issues over here, but I'll get to that later. Like, no, go take care of that. All right. I had a friend who was hustling so hard he killed himself, literally. Instead of going to the doctors, he kept working.
Yep.
Right. Don't do that. Don't be that person, please. People around you love you and care about you, so stay around. Um, and then whatever it is that makes you feel good, that makes you feel better, that makes you feel calm, that puts you in the right place. Well, that's making sure you continue going to your place of worship and you don't stop that, or if you watch that online, you keep watching that. Whatever those things are, just don't stop, and make sure you find time. And for those busy folks out there like me, where you do everything by your calendar, just put time on your calendar for yourself. Like literally block out time on your calendar for yourself.
Hmm.
It's important.
I used to do the calendar block out, and now I just like I'm done at this time, and then I'm done. And I will be elsewhere. And if you need to get up to me, give me an hour. That's all there is to it. So this is do as I say, not as I do. So how do we get you to do this, Matt?
Let me get to the end of my fundraise, get to that 10 million goal, and you will see me on the sands of Cabo for like 2 weeks.
Cabo, interesting. Okay. Can we have you meditate that you're in Cabo a couple hours, 10 minutes a day, so we can get you to get some sleep?
Yeah. I might I do the meditation stuff. I go start going back to the gym more regularly. I still do the gym, just not as regularly as I should. But I get there. I get there. I got enough accountability partners who are working on me.
Good. Okay. Because we need you in this fight, kind sir. So, and I know I'm of a similar mind because I start when I first started the business. Like my favorite thing that everyone knew me for was for relentless hustle, because I could go to two events a night. I producing an event and then go out 5 nights a week and meeting hundreds of people. Which is why I met 5,000 people in 2 years, because I literally did this for 2 years straight. And by the end of it, I was like on my couch, beyond burnt. And now I'm a big proponent of relentless rest. And so, whatever day of the week you do that is your rest day, and then you do nothing. And as you learn, you just keep taking more of that rest, because if you don't, it's going to screw you up entirely. And also, just clears your head, and you end up being much more creative. I come up with some good ideas sometimes when I'm on my walks on my rest day, and just like so, it's hard for us hard charging people trying to make the world a better place, but we too have to do this and make sure that we're okay, because it's crazy out there.
It is crazy out there for sure.
And then, so last question for you: do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
Um, ask of the audience. Follow me on Twitter at Matt Conwell, MacConwell. If you haven't read the book The Alchemist, or if you read it like in college or when you were younger, read it again. It'll mean so much more to you now. Promise you. And if you haven't read the book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? It's an autobiography about Reginald F. Lewis. He was a man from West Baltimore who went on to become a billionaire. He started off as a lawyer, went to Harvard, and later started his own private equity firm. So, two books you should read. Treat yourself. Promise you, you'll enjoy them both. And follow me on Twitter.
Awesome. All good things. We'll put all the details in the show notes for those books and to follow you on Twitter. I'm a big fan, and that's literally how I connected with you, because I was just again blown away by the work you're doing. Matt, you are so impressive, and I'm so glad to finally have met you. And you got a big fan and advocate, homie, waving a hand, because you just this is what we need to do, and not talk about it, be about it. So I am so grateful that you were able to spend some time with me on the show today. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for the invite, and hope everybody enjoyed the show.
Awesome. And that is our show.